everyone, it's Helen. Welcome to my yoga YouTube channel. If you haven't already, please subscribe for all kinds of yoga videos, all experience levels, and always taking requests for what you want. Today I'm just going to break down how to get into a yoga headstand, sirsasana. We're going to do the one with the hands in a release today. Down the line, I will do a tripod one. I personally like this a lot better because the pressure is in your forearms as opposed to on your head. So this is a little bit, it can be a little bit tricky, but I'm going to show you the steps to build up a headstand practice. You may not get it today, but if you continue to practice this video and the tips that I give you, you will eventually get a headstand. What I really don't want is for you to go against the wall and just kick up right into it. I will show you that right now. So really nothing bugs me more than watching someone who wants to get into headstand not use any of their strength and just rely on the wall, completely kick up into it and just sag into it. So that's usually something like this. So they just kick right up into it, and then they sag into their low back, as I'm doing, and maybe they try to come off the wall. Even I can barely do this. It's hard to get off the wall when you don't come up in the right way. First of all, you don't learn how to get up, so it's not helpful. But when you don't come up in the right way and you don't start with that strong foundation, it's going to be much harder to hold headstand, and you're not really learning how to do it. So we're going to let that go. I will give you the option to use the wall once you get into it the way I'm showing you. So let's get started. Okay, so in order to get into a headstand, you are going to need some element of core strength and upper body strength, especially in your shoulders. So just come forward to hands and knees for a moment and just notice how it feels when you let your shoulders collapse and you let your chest sink. We do not want to do this in our headstand. So from here, work on pressing and rounding your shoulders a little bit, puffing up that space between the shoulder blades on your back. So you really don't want your shoulders to collapse by your ears. You always want space between your ears and your shoulders. That's number one. We are going to just start with some dolphin push-ups, and that's going to help bring strength to the shoulders. If you find that you can't get into headstand today, practicing like 10, 15, 20 of these a day is really going to help you to build up that shoulder strength, as well as flexibility. You do need some flexibility in your shoulders to do this. So we're going to bring our elbows down to the floor, and you're going to take your thumb and your pointer finger, hook your left elbow crease. This is to measure where you want to be. So maybe you'll take the other hand and hook the other elbow crease. So you want to be able to grab your elbows. Our elbows tend to get too wide in headstand, and that really screws us up. So you don't want your elbows out here. You want them close enough together to be able to grab them. Keep your elbows exactly where they are now, and interlace your hands. From here, so first with the interlacing, everyone does it differently. I personally think, so there's a lot of people who in their headstand, they'll have their hands flat like this, and their head against their hands. I personally think this is a lot more challenging because if you're using this to hold yourself into the ground, you have a lot less support and a lot less area on the ground than if you, what I do is I kind of round my palm. So if there was like a lacrosse ball in here, and then that way I am using the side of my hands and my wrists a little bit to be able to press down into the ground instead of just flimsy ass hands for your head to go into. So it's not about resting your head in your hands. It's about having a strong foundation. So this is your base. This is what's going on the floor. Okay, that was a mouthful. Sorry if I sound like a drill sergeant. Do you know that line from Mean Girls where it's like, I know I seemed like a bitch, It's only because I was acting like a bitch. That is the story of my life. So, hands interlaced, elbows not too wide. From here, you'll tuck your toes and you'll lift your hips up and back. So it's like this is a dolphin pose with our hands interlaced, so it's like you're in downward facing dog. From here, you're going to inhale and lift your hips high. Exhale, bring your chin towards your thumbs. So it's almost like a forearm plank. Inhale, hips high. Exhale, chin towards your thumbs. Let's do 5 more at your own breath. Oh, it's a shoulder crack. Good. Lower the knees. Let's just take a child's pose here. You could have your knees together or apart, whatever feels good. Head comes towards the floor. Reconnect to the breath here. Let's come up to seated. So do remember that, yes, headstand is cool and arm balances are cool and it's fun to do, and it can be really empowering to do these postures and build up your self-confidence, also keep you humble. But do not beat yourself up if you don't get right into the pose. A lot of these postures take a really long time. They take a thorough understanding of the foundations of yoga and practice. If you get everything the first time you do it, do you want to show up and keep practicing? I mean, you don't really need to, right? So the goal isn't the pose. The goal is the journey, the breathing, the good self-care stuff that you're doing for yourself. Okay, so next step. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to walk into it. I'm just going to have you watch me do this first. Step 1 is kind of an egg shape. This was how I learned how to get into headstand. So starting from the base, from the foundation, measuring out the elbows, interlacing your hands, pretending there's that lacrosse ball in there. And you're going to be on the top of your head, the crown of your head. So planting the head down to the floor. You want a long neck here. So if your chin is too much to your chest, if you're too far back on your head, your chin's going to be into your chest. If your head is arched, it's because you're too close to the forehead. So you need to find that sweet spot. It's almost like a little flat spot of your head. So from here, you will tuck the toes. You'll watch me first for this one. So you're in like a downward facing dog on your head, but only like 15% of the pressure is on your head. Most of it is on your forearms. You're going to walk your feet in as much as you can. This might be where you stay today, and you're just working on pressing the floor away from you. So pressing so much that you're feeling it activate in your lats and your shoulders, and you're not collapsing your shoulders to your ears. So pressing actively away from the floor. So step 1 would be an egg pose. So you'll come in as much as you can, and then maybe one foot comes into the chest, maybe the other foot comes into the chest. And you can play around with holding just one foot at a time here. So to be in your egg pose, you will notice that my hips are a little bit past my shoulders. And that's just kind of a center of gravity thing, right? So if your hips were directly in line with your shoulders, it's a lot harder to hold this here than if your hips are back a little bit. So we'll try that together. Let me just take a moment and breathe. So again, starting from the bottom up. And remember, this is where it's like a little bit freaky, is because your hips are going to be a little bit past your shoulders, which feels counterintuitive. It feels like you're going to fall forward. So in this instance, if you want a wall or like a buddy on the other side of you, then that's fine. But it's because you're not throwing yourself into the wall and then working on coming off the wall. You're working on coming up. The wall will catch you if you fall forward. But also don't be afraid of falling forward, because the worst thing that happens is you just kind of, you fall. It's part of life, it's part of yoga. Okay, from the top, measure out those elbows, important. Interlace your hands. Head comes down, tuck the toes, lift the hips. With your legs straight, walk in as much as you can. You're getting your hips as high over the shoulders as you can. That's going to make it easier. Maybe bend one knee into the chest. Maybe switch. And then bending one knee into the chest, whichever one, pressing off the opposite toes and pulling both knees in towards your chest. Press down through the forearms. My first step here when I learned how to headstand was I stayed in the ball for maybe a few weeks, and I just practiced holding this. Once you get really steady here, you'll start to be more comfortable with coming up. Let's just take a few more breaths. Keep pressing down through the forearms. And then let's come back down. From here, stack your fists one on top of the other and just rest your forehead on them. So it's like a child's pose with your head on your fists. Just realigning the spine. And then sitting back up. So if you want to try more, we'll practice going from the ball to coming straight up. But do realize that, so in your ball, right, your hips are a little bit past your shoulders. To get straight up, you're going to have to bring that back in line. So your hips are going to have to go back in line with your shoulders. So I'll just show you how it looks. You can watch, you don't have to. So, measure out, do the steps, coming in, ball. So here's my ball, right? Hips are a little bit past my shoulders. To straighten up, I have to suck my butt back in and my hips back in. Because if I keep them past my shoulders, then it's a lot more likely that I will fall over, which again isn't the end of the world. Pressing down through the forearms and zipping up the legs, everything nice and tight. You can always have a friend stick their wrist between your feet, and you work on squeezing that, and that's going to keep you there. That's all you need to have is a friend with their hand. Okay, so we will try that again from the top. Option to just stay in the ball, or option to come all the way up. So, foundation. Measure out those elbows. Interlace your hands. Head comes down. Tuck the toes. Walk in as much as you can. One or both knees into the chest. Find that ball. Find your foundation. You'll start to feel steady here. And then slowly starting to straighten up the legs and bring your hips back in line with the shoulders. So everything is one long line. Press down through the forearms. Zip the legs up. Core here. So we don't want to be arching the back. You want to pull your belly in. And make sure you're breathing. Maybe you'll notice all the dirt on your floor. Or maybe better yet, you'll focus on just one point of gaze, which is a little bit more yoga-like. See if you can come down the same way you came in. It's okay if you can't. Bending your knees, bringing them in towards your chest, sticking your hips out a little bit, hips past shoulders. Coming back down to the ball, and then maybe lowering all the way down. Let's take that child's pose again. Stack the fists. Head to the fists. Once you get very comfortable with that, what I would suggest would be working on lowering down to a pike. And that's going to help you to start build the abdominal strength to lift both legs off the floor at the same time. So I'll just demo that really fast, and then we'll take a child's pose, and I'll send you off into the world to headstand. Hands interlace. Set up the foundation. So pretend, I'm in the ball, and then I'm up in my regular headstand, so working on a pike pose. This is going to be the toughest thing you could do in a headstand, is straightening the legs. And notice how far my hips are past my shoulders. So what this will enable you to do is to work on coming up with the legs straight. So holding that pike and lowering down with control. And then one day, and you do need open shoulders and open hips to do this, so as your yoga practice progresses, but one day what you'll be able to do is walk in with the legs straight as much as you can, roll forward on the toes, look how far past my shoulders that my hips are, and the legs just magically lift off the floor together. This took me a long time. Everyone is different. It might take you less, it might take you more. But again, once you're comfortable in that headstand, practicing holding that pike, it's going to build a lot of strength. Okay. So from here, I'll just take a nice child's pose. We're going to take about a minute here. Just reconnecting to the breath. We did a lot very fast. But headstand is so good. It's really good for relation, good for depression, good for just giving you a nice new perspective and keeping you humble, because sometimes it's a little bit tricky. And coming all the way up. All right, yogis, I hope you liked this tutorial. Remember, practice, practice, practice. And whether or not you can do a headstand or not does not mean you are more zen or closer to enlightenment. It's just a fun thing to try when you feel that you're ready. Remember to stay safe. And again, don't kick to the wall and then come off it. Use it just if you're gonna fall forward, okay? Please subscribe to my channel. Feel free to make any requests with any other tutorials or postures that you would like to learn. Have an awesome day. Namaste.